Hello, I'm Taylor Welden, Creative Director of Carryology. Today I'm reporting in from our Carryology Viking Longship in the Arctic Circle. And today we're going to talk about my 8 favorite pieces of gear that we took to our Carryology Iceland expedition, camping for 2 weeks in the middle of the winter. So as I mentioned, we were in Iceland for 2 weeks in the middle of the winter, and this would be my second trip to Iceland. So I had sort of an idea of what we were doing over there. I knew the weather and the landscape were pretty extreme, but I didn't really know what to expect for the winter, especially camping for 2 weeks. And a little funny anecdote, when we were driving around the entire ring road, including the Westfjords, we'd be camping out in our tents, and even Icelanders were like, wait a second, you are camping in the winter in Iceland? So that kind of felt like we got a little bit of cred there. I don't know, it felt good for someone to think we're crazy. The mission for this trip, other than for exploring Iceland and having an awesome time, was to see the Aurora Borealis. And I will say, spoiler alert, we saw them twice. And if you stay tuned to the end of this video, you'll see some footage and some photos. Really stoked. It was a bucket list item for myself, for Laurence, and for Brian. And some good footage at the end. Make sure to stay tuned for that. So because we knew we were going to be camping in the winter, in the cold, out in the elements, we reached out to several of our favorite brands and asked them if they could sponsor us with gear for this trip. And luckily, all of them said yes. They hooked us up. They kept us alive, truly kept us alive. So for the 6 months leading up to the trip, we were focused on selecting the very best piece of gear from all of our favorite brands that we cover here on Carryology. Now, I will admit this part was daunting because this gear was meant to keep us alive. Ultimately, waterproofness was critical because Iceland is so wet. You know, if you get soaking wet out in the Westfjords in the cold, there's a chance that you could die or require very serious medical attention. So we worked closely with all of these brands, and they even helped us select the best of the best, what they thought would be really helpful for this trip. And we chose the very best pieces of kit for our 3-person team. While there was a ton of products that we brought over to Iceland, we're gonna focus on my 8 favorite pieces, things that really stood out, that really became kind of like icons of this trip. If you wanna see my entire complete list of gear that I brought to Iceland, check the description below, and every single thing that I brought that was in my bag, or my 2-bag system, which I'll get to, is included in that list. So take a look at that. Now, I was very careful about creating that list. If it's not on that list, it didn't go to Iceland. If it went to Iceland with me, it's on that list. And most importantly, I want to thank all of our gear sponsors, all of our gear partners that hooked us up with all that gear. We really appreciate you. Couldn't have done it without you. Thank you again. Now, without further ado, let's get to my 8 favorite pieces of gear that I brought to our Carryology Iceland expedition. We've got the big Agnes Diamond Park 0-degree sleeping bag. And this thing is feature rich like crazy. I'm gonna go through some of the features that they list and then tell you why I love this and why it was one of my favorite pieces in Iceland. So this thing is super modular. The top part of it actually unzips. So the zipper's running down the length of this, so you can completely remove the top quilt and just use it as a little blanket. It also has this really cool system on the back. And this allows you to put your sleeping pad in the back side of it, and the pad doesn't slide around. That's something that drives me crazy. I love that feature about this bag. And additionally, there's a little pillow spot, little pillow pocket. So your pillow, your inflatable pillow that is, can slip under this pocket and it doesn't move around, just like the sleeping pad. Some other features, it's filled with 600 down tech fill. And what that basically means, that's goose down. So it's very warm. This bag is good down to 0 degrees. And it's also very hydrophobic. So if this gets wet, you're not gonna freeze to death and you'll still stay warm. And then, water being such a big concern for Iceland, the exterior is made with a nylon ripstop shell. So basically this will repel water thanks to the DWR finish on top. Super important for Iceland. Another cool thing about this, since it's using down, I kept this completely cinched down in my Sea to Summit compression sack. And this thing got to about this big. And you can't really do that with synthetic bags, not as easily as anyway. And this shrunk down really tight, and it made packing it up while traveling there on an airplane a breeze. So that's another benefit of this. And the final coolest feature on this bag, in my opinion, is the fact, I told you before, it fully unzips, the top quilt comes off. So if you and your partner have this same bag, you can actually zip the bags together and make one giant extra large sleeping bag. Super cool. Again, that's just like scratching the surface of features on this bag, but that's the features that they list for this bag. And now I'm going to tell you why this piece is one of my top favorite pieces in Iceland. I keep harping on this. All this gear that we use had to keep us alive, and frankly, I just thought it was a sleeping bag. I need a sleeping bag. It's going to be cold. We're camping in the winter in Iceland. It's rated for 0 degrees, and that's awesome. I don't think I've ever owned a 0 degree bag. I've owned 10 degree bags, but this bag, I mean, the first night we camped, it was cold. It was very, very cold, and I was a little skeptical of this bag, whether it was actually going to keep us warm or not. And very quickly, this became one of my favorite pieces of gear, because at the end of the day, after long hikes, driving in that Land Rover Defender, this kept me warm, it kept me comfortable. I didn't slide around on top of my sleeping pad. And, I shift positions a lot in my sleep. So I sleep on my side, I sleep on my stomach, go over to my back. And there's enough room in this particular bag where I can sleep how I want to sleep. And that, for me, was like the biggest game changer of any sleep. This is the nicest sleeping bag I've ever used. Easily. No questions, hands down. I'm really lucky that we had this in Iceland. I'd be worried, and I think the trip would have been a lot different if I had any other sleeping bag. One of my top 8 favorite pieces that I brought to Iceland. And now we've got the Big Agnes Shield 2 Expedition tent. And this tent is also very feature rich. Big Agnes lists this as an expedition tent, meaning it's 4 seasons. And that means it's a single wall design. And that actually made me a little skeptical, single wall. We'll get to that in a little bit here. The design of this tent is made for high winds, high elevation, serious camping, for all the, the worst extremes that you could possibly encounter. Now, the single layer aspect of it, it's actually not, it's a single layer in the sense that there's not a shell or rain fly that goes on top. For the tent body, it's actually a 3-layer waterproof construction for that piece of fabric. And what that means is the fabric is waterproof on the exterior, it's breathable, and it helps manage moisture. When it's cold on the outside and it's warm on the inside and you're breathing, it helps with the condensation inside. Now, there is only one door on this, which at first I was a little bit worried about, but then, as you'll see in a second, that actually became a feature that I liked on this tent. Why did I like this tent so much? Why is it one of my top 8 favorite pieces that I brought to Iceland? I mean, honestly, I never owned a 4-season tent before in my entire life. I never owned a single wall tent before in my life, except for maybe Boy Scouts when we used those like canvas tents that were horrible in weather. This thing just like became the mascot of the trip. It was super awesome. It stayed completely bone dry. I opted for the 2-person size on this tent, so I had a little bit more room with all my gear inside. And frankly, the single door at my feet actually became a really, it was actually awesome. I'm used to having tents that have 2 doors, and now that I have 1 door, or that I used 1 door on this tent, I don't think I ever want to have 2 doors again. It's extra weight, extra complexity, zippers can break. I also added the little gear loft in the top. That's a little additional accessory offered by Big Agnes, and that was a lifesaver. Getting the tent with my headlamp, my phone, my camera, uploading photos at the end of the night, and it just worked flawlessly. It became an icon for our photography, with the Northern Lights and everything. It was a really great looking tent, really awesome tent. Not too heavy, not too light. The weight for this tent is approximately 3 pounds, 14 ounces. So it's not crazy heavy, but it's also not crazy light. And for what we needed, this was awesome. I have never used a tent nicer than this before in my life. I love this tent. Now we're gonna talk about my 2 bag setup for the trip. The first being the Arcteryx Alpha FL30. It's a mouthful. So I want to talk about the name here, specifically the name Alpha. Arcteryx, that's their naming system. That means alpine focused, primarily for like rock climbing, alpine climbing. The FL means fast and light, so this is going to be their lighter weight stuff. Doesn't mean not durable, but it means lightweight, focused on being lightweight, so you're not carrying extra stuff while you're climbing. And then 30, meaning 30 liters. This is made from Arcteryx's AC squared fabric, and this is a TPU coated nylon fabric that is totally waterproof. And because they're using waterproof fabric, they're actually seam taping every single seam in here, making this bag completely waterproof with the way that it's constructed. I'll show you that in a second here. The back, very, very simple. lightweight padding on the shoulder straps, but very comfortable. No real back panel for like breathable back panel that is. There is a foam like frame sheet in here that makes it, I guess there is plastic, but primarily foam. This bag is 30 liters, and the reason that this is part of my 2-bag system is because this is the bag that came with me on the airplane and would go on short hikes or long hikes, and then the other bag is the gear hauler. Now, one interesting thing about this bag, I think anyway, is the opening mechanism here. There's a little latch that attaches to this cord, and then there's a drawstring, and this is part of the waterproof aspect of this bag. So once you open up this drawstring, there's a roll top in here, and this is where you're getting all the waterproofness from, is this roll top system. So here's all my stuff in here. Only one access point, so that's going to be, you know, you have to decide whether that's perfect for you or not. But for camping in Iceland, when there's tons and tons of rain and ice and moisture, this system works really well for me. Now there is a small external zippered pocket right here. And they're using water resistant zippers, but that is nice for, you know, I keep my glasses in there, keep my headlamp in here, you know, waterproof headlamp, all that stuff. This is made by Princeton Tech, but it's quick access stuff only, or access to the main compartment. So now that we've gone over kind of the features and technical features, what Arcteryx says anyway about this bag, you know, in a revised version, why did this bag make my top 8 pieces of gear for Iceland? And frankly, it's because it performed flawlessly. It was lightweight, it did everything I wanted it to do. I mean, we were stuck out in some serious rain for extended periods of time, and I had, you know, my Canon R5 in here, and I think 2 other lenses, and if I had a, you know, a traditional bag that was made out of nylon and with water resistant zippers, my camera would have been ruined. This bag kept everything I had the entire trip bone dry the entire time. I even toss in a little, one of those little silica gel packets in the bottom, and that helps, you know, like if something is wet when you're putting it in there. But this thing like became the star of the show. It was super comfortable. When I needed it, I used the waist strap, but generally speaking on a bag this size, I don't really find it useful. The shoulder straps were comfortable. There is not a hydration bladder, and that's fine, but for me, I didn't really need that. I was, you know, it's cold over there, so I'm not really like sweating profusely. I just go inside, get the water bottle, bust it out. At one point I did lash my jacket to this on the outside. Basically everything I wanted from this bag just kept delivering, and that's why it's one of my top 8 favorite pieces that I brought to Iceland, and one of the 2 bags that I brought to Iceland. So the second bag in my 2-bag system is the Big Agnes Big Joe Duffel 110 liters. And 110 liters, I'm kind of dwarfed over here. But this bag, again, one of my top 8 favorite pieces. So the features that they list about this bag are waterproof fabric, completely waterproof. That's a TPU coating, and it's a nylon ripstop fabric, so it is going to be super durable, puncture proof. They're using water resistant zippers, so it can't be submerged, but it can be, you know, left out on a tarmac and rained upon. It has a wide mouth opening, super wide mouth opening, a shoulder strap that's removable, and it's padded, lightly padded, but padded. Speaking of padded, there's 4 different padded grab handles all around the bag, so it makes pulling it out of a trunk or off of the luggage carousel easy. The climbing inspired zipper pullers, which are locking here. There are cinch straps, which are removable as well. And there's also an external quick access pocket here, and that actually leads to double pockets on the inside. And other than that, it's a pretty basic design, but there are quite a bit of features in this thing. I mean, like, that list of features is kind of more than I expected when I was sent this bag. And the fact that it came in orange was a nice little cherry on top. So now that I've listed the features of this bag, let's talk about why this became one of my top 8 favorite pieces. And I'll be honest with you right away, I'm a 1-bag traveler, and B, I'm not really a duffel guy. And maybe that's because I'm a 1-bag traveler, but with the whole duffel thing, I never really give them the time of day. I don't really see the point of them. But for this trip, I mean, I needed to put all my gear in a really, really big bag. And at 110 liters, that's the big bag I needed. So it was kind of just like an afterthought. I needed somewhere to put my stuff. They sent me this, cool. But when I got this bag and I started loading it up and using it over in Iceland, it became apparent that it did everything that I asked from it and just kept delivering. There was even one point that we needed a little bit more room in the Land Rover Defender. So we actually had to take one of these bags out. I forget whose it was, mine, Laurence's or Brian's, but we put it up on the roof and we were driving and it was raining. Well, I wouldn't say it was pouring, but it was raining and the content stayed completely dry. It was perfectly fine, 100% fine. The fact that we're using these as our makeshift kind of gear closets out of the back of the car and everything stayed dry, it was awesome. I mean, there was never a hole, never a puncture. This was dragged across lava rock, thrown up on the roof of the Defender. We even used these to sit on at one point. And even the airline baggage handlers, which are notoriously rough, they didn't really ding this thing up at all. I mean, it's still, other than a couple scuffs, that's character, that's patina, if you will. It works and functions as it did the day I got it. And that's why this is one of my favorite 8 pieces that I brought to Iceland. I love this thing. Now, for the apparel side of things, we have the Arcteryx Proton LT hoodie. Now what this is, it's an insulating mid-layer, and it's good for both active and static activities. What that means is there's 60 gram fill core loft in the hood, and 80 gram core loft throughout the body and sleeves here. And what core loft is, it's this magical synthetic substance that does not make any sense. It must be made from unicorns because it is super, super breathable, yet it's insulating. And the most important part about that being is if this gets wetted out, completely soaked with either sweat or just torrential downpour, it'll still keep you warm. And that's very unique for an insulator. If you were wearing a down insulator and that got wetted out, you're gonna freeze to death. It will not insulate you when it's soaking wet. The core loft and this Proton LT hoodie will definitely do that. Nice little added feature, this little chest pocket up here. I like that. And every jacket, in my opinion, should have hand pockets. Super important. This is a full zip design. So, opens, full zip design. And of course, as you guessed in the name, and as I mentioned, the hood, there is an adjustment cinch up here on the hood, so you can pull it down tight as the weather gets worse. And I gotta say, I've owned a lot of insulating mid-layers, and this one I thought was just gonna be another insulating mid-layer until I wore it over in Iceland. And I gotta say, this thing is absolutely magic. Not only is it one of my top 8 favorite pieces for this Iceland expedition, it's my favorite insulating mid-layer I've ever owned in my entire life. And that's pretty serious. This is crazy, crazy awesome. It's lightweight, and I mean, it's cold over in Iceland, man. It's very cold. And when you're being active, I personally run hot. It really sucks when you're wearing an insulating mid-layer and you just start roasting and it doesn't breathe. This somehow breathes out all my sweat and perspiration and keeps me cool. But yet when I stop and I'm doing nothing and I'm static, underneath my Beta SV shell jacket, it keeps me totally toasty warm. I do not understand it. There's some mad science going on behind this. It's totally wild. I mean, it's really all about the core loft insulation and why that is so amazing. I'll never understand how this performs so well, but somehow this thing it's shocking. It's lightweight, it's black. It's very, very important that it's black, and it fits really well. I absolutely love this thing. It's, again, the best insulating mid-layer I've ever owned in my entire life. Even works with the Stetson. So now we have the Arcteryx Gamma AR pant. And a little bit about the naming system for this one. Gamma is used for soft shells that can be either used as a mid-layer or an outer layer. They're highly weather resistant, they have lots of stretch, and they're very breathable, as well as being durable. And now the AR aspect for the Gamma AR pant means all round. And what that kind of refers to is it means this can be used for kind of anything. It's not specifically designed for climbing. It's not specifically designed for hiking, but it can be used for any or all of the above. Now, some specific features about this pant. It has its own built-in belt here. Nice nylon webbing. It just attaches on the other side to this nylon webbing. There's a button snap and a zipper, so easy to get in and out of. One thing I thought was a little strange at first was there's no back pockets, if you'll see there. And I learned quickly there's a good reason for that. And it's so when you're out adventuring and hiking around and, you know, going on an expedition, you don't want to have stuff in your back pocket. It feels weird to sit down on stuff. So to make up for that, they have two traditional side pockets, which are, they have mesh bags in here. So it's breathable, moisture won't get stuck in there. And both of these pockets are zippered, which is pretty cool. So you can keep a phone in there and maybe, you know, don't have to worry about it falling out. And then, since they did get rid of that back pocket, like I mentioned, or back pockets, there is a zipper on the right thigh here. And it holds, you know, quite a bit of room in here. I was keeping a flashlight in here, maybe even my, my wool hat, but that was really nice. And there is cinches at the bottom of the legs here. If it gets really nasty, you can cinch it down and wrap it around your boots. And they also do include this little clip here that you can clip that onto your boot so they stay down when you're adventuring around. I really like this feature, a gusseted crotch. So that helps for both comfort and for movement. There is a lot of stretch in this fabric and it is very durable. And of course, there's a DWR finish on the front face of this fabric, making it very water resistant. It is not waterproof, it's a soft shell, but it's very, very water resistant. And now the reason why did I choose this one? Kind of like a lot of the other products here, I didn't expect this to be a favorite. I just thought it was going to be a pair of pants that I was going to wear on this trip. And I didn't really have any experience with the Gamma collection of products or pants specifically. Arcteryx, sometimes people think they run a little bit tight or a little skinny. These are true to size for me, which I was shocked with. And they weren't slim cut. I guess because of the stretch, they had a lot of movement and a lot of freedom in there. So that was really great. But, you know, I will say, when we were going to these waterfalls, these epic, insane waterfalls, aka fosses over in Iceland, these repelled water like no other. They were really, really awesome, really, really water repellent. And while they're not waterproof, when things got really nasty, I would get my, my Beta AR hard shell pants and put them over top of these for a fully waterproof system. But I really didn't need to do that often. You know, I just rocked these out and they repelled all the moisture and all the wetness. And frankly, they were really, really comfortable. They had all the storage I needed. I mean, I'm not really like going over there for style per se, but when I had to walk into a cafe or restaurant at the end of the day, they looked presentable. You know, they're gray. They don't look like crazy adventure pants, at least in my opinion. And I gotta say, like, I'm totally won over by these. I ordered a second pair. These are probably my all-time favorite adventure pants. That's what I call them. And that's why they're in my top 8. It's hard to pick a favorite, but this might be really, really high up there. This is the Arcteryx Beta SV jacket. And now a bit about the naming. Beta meaning it's a high-performance product for diverse activities. And I have to mention this. People get a little bit concerned or they get a little bit caught up with the beta versus alpha situation. We specifically chose the beta jacket. The alpha, although it is higher in as far as letters go, alpha, beta. Alpha is made for climbing specifically. It's for being in a harness. It's for, you know, the sleeves are cut longer so you can climb and reach. The pockets are set up in a way that when you're wearing a harness, you can access them. So there's no, you know, side hand pockets, which are critically important for me. So the Beta is actually probably your best choice if you're just going to be doing like general mountaineering, climbing, hiking stuff. Where if you're going to be doing just climbing, Alpha is going to be better. Now this is the Beta SV jacket. And the SV is the highest tier for like the most heavy duty performance category that Arcteryx offers. It's severe weather protection for extended periods in severe weather. And what that means is this particular jacket is cut and designed to keep you alive in the world's most brutal places, including Iceland. And it's made with a 3-layer Gore-Tex Pro fabric. And the 3-layer Gore-Tex Pro fabric is extremely waterproof. No water is passing through here. There's a membrane that allows the perspiration inside when you're getting warm to breathe and escape, but it will not let water in. And as part of that, I run hot. So the pit zips are a nice little bonus here. So if you need to dump a bunch of heat while you're hiking, you open these up, vent out a bunch of heat. And in my opinion, every single jacket should have hand pockets. And these land about right about here. So you can wear a belt with your backpack. But these are really, really nice. They're zippered, so you can put important stuff in here. Zip it closed, and they're gonna be totally waterproof. The zippers are water-resistant zippers, and they work really, really, really well. I do love this pocket here, the chest pocket. Probably my favorite pocket on the jacket. Quick access. And of course, there is a nice little chest pocket inside. That has a little bit of stretch to it as well. There's adjustable cuffs on this thing right here with Velcro. And these actually worked really, really well. They feel like a bit of Hypalon on here. They don't actually list the specs. There's cinch cords for elastic, cinch cords all over this jacket, including the bottom and in the hood. There's actually two in the hood right here. And I gotta say, I love this color. It's all about having a red shell, especially when you're in like a really extreme place like Iceland. It's a good reason for me to choose red. I love all black everything forever. Love black, everything should be black. But when it comes to adventuring, you know, if you're doing something sketchy or dangerous, it's nice to have a bright colored shell. So if something were to happen, you can be spotted, you can be found. And lastly, where is it here? We put our little Iceland expedition patch on here just for fun to make us look legit. That was made by NoSo. Thank you, NoSo. Now, why did I love this jacket? Why is it my top 8? I gotta say, this is like the mascot of the trip itself. Like, Brian had this like greenish one, Beta SV, and Laurence had a cream colored Beta SV. So we all look different. You could see who you could differentiate between the three of us in photos, which made it kind of cool, you know, because we're like little specks out, like getting a photo of us on a waterfall or a cliff or something. And like, if there's one piece that I was wearing the most that kept me dry, safe, protected from the elements, it's this piece. I mean, putting this on feels like you're putting on some armor. And without this, we'd be soaked, we'd be cold. I mean, could we have died? Probably without this. I mean, this thing is truly an epic piece of gear. It is the pinnacle of rain shells in the world, in my opinion. Again, some people think the Alpha is. The Alpha is the best jacket in the world for climbing. This, in my opinion, is the best shell jacket in the entire world for general purpose, hiking, a little bit of climbing, adventuring in general, and that is why this is one of my top 8 items for my Iceland adventure. So the wild card and the final piece of my 8 favorite pieces that I brought to Iceland on our expedition is the iPhone 13 Pro Max. And first of all, this is really cool. Apple sent this to us right when it came out, about like a week before they came out for everyone else. So we got to test this before everyone else did over in Iceland. And I want to start off by first saying we're not a tech blog, we're not a computer blog, we're not, you know, a phone blog, and we're not going to go into all the very technical specs on this, but we'll talk about a little bit of this. I mean, first of all, this thing, I mean, we think of it as just a phone, a piece of tech, but it's actually quite adventure ready. And I normally like a black leather case. Usually I rock a Bellroy or an Apple leather case on here. But being that we're going to Iceland, I'm using the Apple red silicone case, and that gives a little bit of grip, and I figure if I dropped it in the dark, be able to spot it. So that's kind of neat about the case. The camera on this phone is astounding. You know, I brought professional camera gear. Laurence brought professional camera gear, and we didn't think we were going to need these cameras. However, they turned out to be really awesome. This has a terabyte worth of storage on this particular unit. And that's a ton. You can store tons of movies and data and whatever else you need. It is water resistant, and there is a lot of water in Iceland. I keep harping on that. And the lightning cable will actually tell you if there's too much water in the port, and it'll warn you that, you know, let it dry out first. So this is, you know, it's a piece of tech that's just a phone, but I mean, it really is adventure ready. And the reason why this kind of shocked me, why it became one of my top 8 items, is, I mean, there's a few different scenarios and specific reasons why. You know, one of them being, there was one night that Laurence, Fry, and I were trying to find the Northern Lights, and all 3 of us were using our iPhone 13s. One of us was searching for the KP index and where the activity was happening around Iceland, and the other one of us was searching the weather and monitoring real-time radar activity. So all 3 of us were utilizing this phone and our own separate phones to pull off, you know, something awesome. We're chasing the Northern Lights. That was the whole theme of this trip. And I am happy to say we were able to find them that night, you know, driving around in the middle of Iceland with just our phones and able to track down the Northern Lights because we were watching all this data being read at our fingertips. It was awesome. And then most importantly, I mentioned we have the pro level camera setups. The one night we were up in the Westfjords, it was way too nasty to camp, and we had to stay into a little guest house. We were in Isafjordur. We left our camera and all of our gear back in the Land Rover Defender, and we're just walking around, and all of a sudden above us, the most spectacular show of Northern Lights I've ever seen in my life. You know, and that was the last Northern Lights we saw on that trip. And that particular showing was just absolutely astounding. Now, it was happening right above our heads. We could see it with the naked eye, and we didn't have our cameras with us. So what did I do? I mean, I only had the camera that I have with me. That was my iPhone 13. And you'll see here in just a minute at the end of this video, all the video that I captured for that Northern Lights display was on this phone. And there was no special editing. That's straight out of camera, if you will. Nothing special about it. I don't even think I was shooting in 4K because it can shoot in 4K, but I was too out of my mind. But I was just pointing this up at the sky, and I am still to this day, I'm shocked what I was able to capture on this phone with that display of the Northern Lights. Absolutely astounded. Super, super happy with this. I couldn't have asked for a better phone, a better workstation, and a better backup camera. Love this thing. All right, so that is my 8 favorite pieces of gear that I brought along to our Carryology Icelandic R&D expedition. Let me know in the comments below whether you agree with my decisions here, or if you have any upgrades for me. What do you think your favorite piece of gear was out of all these pieces? Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Without further ado, we're going to end this with a big thank you to all of our gear partners with all the gear that we brought that wasn't mentioned in this video. And we're going to show you some of those Northern Lights videos. Enjoy. Thanks, y'all.